now we have a technology that enables to change that market infrastructure and bring more capability that will translate into new opportunity for investors to access product at a global scale.
Let me ask you something, and I think it's important for me to ask you a question that everybody have. Daniel, and I probably might be a naive question, but it's extremely important. None of these things are hackable, which means, do you think that down the road we're going to face some threat about people trying to hack and be successful doing a lot of things? Obviously, the story they are telling us is that it's impossible, that nobody will do that. But down the road, I've been reading, lately that obviously that's the major risk that we might face as society evolve and technology evolve. With regards of that, which might be a valid question, that most of the institutional investors that are using and perhaps will use this technology to validate what the managers are doing, are those questions arise? And what is the explanation if, God forbid, something like that happened, Daniel?
Well, obviously, when you have new technology, the risk is always there, right? We have seen, obviously, the news about wallets being hacked and crypto assets being stolen. So this is a risk, of course, that exists, and that exists mostly in nascent markets that are unregulated. So what we see now, especially in the US, is the development of new regulation. And regulation is important because they're aimed at protecting investors. And those regulations are there to regulate the different actors of this ecosystem to make sure that indeed we operate on an infrastructure that addresses those risks. Some of the value, for instance, that Token has been developing over the last 8 years is to build a mechanism where you link the asset not with a wallet that is anonymous, but with an identity. So it connects the asset with who you are. So someone cannot steal your identity. It can steal your assets, of course, but not your identity. So in that case, you do have a recovery mechanism that enables you to recover your assets if that asset is being stolen. So as you can see, yes, the risk exists, but as regulators are stepping in, we will be dealing more and more with regulated actors that therefore will be responsible for what they deliver in terms of service, but they will be also developing the technology that will address those risks.
In the other corner, when you are seeing all this arising, do you see, and this is a very important question as well, you have Latin America, you have Asia, you have the US, and you have Europe. There is not a secret that the US has been taking a leading role in all about the digitalization, the digital assets, and what it's going to do for the next incoming quarters. Do you think in terms of Latin America versus comparing Latin America with Europe and Asia, what do you think is the best continent that is more ready, willing, and able to accept the technology as an overall? If you can articulate about Europe, Asia, and Latin America, that would be great. That gave us ideas of what it might happen in those impacts in those areas.
Well, what is interesting is that we've been really going from one market to the other, talking with regulators, and every time we are in one market, being Singapore, Hong Kong, Paris, Berlin, New York, everybody believed that the crypto development is happening in their market because there are so many things going on, right? And I think that the regulators recognize that because they were one of the first to start stepping into this industry and DeFi regulation or sandbox to enable those local companies to operate. Now, of course, when you start dealing with capital market, it becomes a very important subject at the scale of the country. And every country now is understanding the impact that it can have on its own capital market and addressing the regulatory changes that is required. Now, is there a market that is ahead of others? I don't think so. Are there markets that have a different scale, and therefore once they implement the proper regulation, will they be ahead of others? Yes, clearly that will be the case. But you also have to look at this technology as a global technology. You remove the barrier that exists between market, between infrastructure, between regulators. So we look really at a global village that will leverage this technology, and you will have local ecosystem that will deploy this technology and find a use case that is specific for the markets.
In the other corner, where do you think it will be, Daniel, one of those areas where it will be more effective? Everybody think about financial services, and obviously everything seems to be going into kind of the tokenization. I've been speaking with people at the New York Stock Exchange, and they are seeing the technology as something they might acquire and they want to develop and use. Even exchanges are seeing that opportunity. But in other industries, obviously, remember, you are an